doors blew up and it dropped, and I was lucky that the elevator got caught between two floors.
Which floors?
The B levels, the basement levels, with all the, all the mechanics on.
There was another big explosion in the other tower. Flames coming out of this billowing grey smoke. People still not panicking. People not quite understanding what was going on. Then somebody said that they saw an airliner go into one of those towers. Then, from much, much lower, I don't know what on earth caused that.
At 10:30, I tried to leave the building, but as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble and more smoke and more dust. I ran inside the buildings, the chandelier shook, and again, black smoke filled the air. Within another 5 minutes, we were covered again with more silt and more dust. And then a fire marshal came in and said we had to leave because if there was a third explosion, this building might not last.
As we were getting our gear on and making our way to the stairway, there was a heavy-duty explosion.
Some of the people out, then there was some secondary explosions, and then subsequent collapses. So I don't know how many people were in there. I know there was a lot of firefighters. But
New York's bravest never had a chance.
We really never even got to that close to the building. An explosion blew and it knocked everybody over.
The FBI is here, as you can see. They had roped this area off. They were taking photographs and securing this area just prior to that huge explosion that we all heard and felt.
Most of the victims so far were people outside the blown-up buildings.
like, it sounded like gunfire, you know, bang, 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 and then all of a sudden, 3 big explosions.
To me, it sounded like an explosion. Then the building, the rolling sound sounded like the building collapsed.
Where the floors collapsed down. I saw it blow and then ran like hell. Thank God. I'm 69, but I can still run.
It just went ba-boom. It was like a bomb went off. And it was like holy hell coming down them stairs. And then when finally got to the bottom, we were coming out on a mezzanine level there, and then other explosions came right from it, because everyone flying.
We just saw that as well. The second tower, the only one that was standing, tower number 1, just we saw some kind of explosion, a lot of smoke come out at the top of the tower, and then it collapsed down onto the street.
Next thing we know, it was boom, and the floor started shaking. And then we saw debris fall down, and next thing we know, we had to get out of the building. We were stuck on the stairs for a while. We finally got down to the lobby. Then we get to the lobby, it was this big explosion.
Well, me and Mr. Hess, the corporation counsel, were on the 23rd floor. I told him we got to get out of here. We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor.
I was making my way to the foot of the World Trade Center. Suddenly, while talking to an officer who was questioning me about my press credentials, we heard a very loud blast, an explosion. We looked up, and the building literally began to collapse.
Rose Arcee, one of our CNN producers, is on the phone. Rose, what do you got?
I'm about a block away, and there were several people that were hanging out the windows right below where the plane crashed, when suddenly you saw the top of the building start to shake, and people began leaping from the windows in the north side of the building. You saw 2 people at first plummet, and then a third one, and then the entire top of the building just blew up, and splinters of debris are falling on the street.
When I tried to save people, in a moment we heard a big explosion coming down. Everything just went black. Everything came down, glass started popping. People got hurt, stuff went on top of them, and it was a big explosion, and everything got dark, real dark, like snow. You can see behind me, this is not snow, this is all from the building. It was a terrible nightmare.
Because I was down in the basement, all of a sudden we heard a loud bang, and the elevator doors blew open. Some guy was burnt up, so I dragged him out. His skin was all hanging off.
The streets of the financial district covered with debris, in some cases ankle deep. Cars on fire, cars just turned by the force of the explosions. It was like something no one had ever seen.
This huge, incredible force of wind and debris actually came up the stairs, knocked my helmet off, knocked me to the ground.
I was about 5 blocks away when I heard explosions, 3 thuds, and turned around to see the building we just got out of. Antenna tip over and fall in on itself.
We started floor by floor, started popping out.
It was like, if they had detonated.
Detonated.
Take down a building.
I go downstairs, the foreman tells me to go to remove the containers. As I'm walking by the main freight car of the building, in the corridor, that's when I got blown. I mean, the impact of the explosion, of whatever happened, it threw me to the floor.
In Washington, D.C., many congressional leaders have been transferred to a secret location. Some senators have described this as a second Pearl Harbor.
This was clearly the way the structure is collapsing. This was the result of something that was planned. It's not accidental that the first tower just happened to collapse and then the second tower just happened to collapse in exactly the same way. How they accomplished this, we don't know.
You certainly don't need to be a demolition expert to recognize that the towers were blown to bits, and that Building 7 was about the most classic case of controlled demolition you will ever see. You don't have to be a video expert to recognize the problems with the live network feeds. And you certainly don't have to be an ironworker to understand why and how these columns were cut in such a manner. You don't have to be an NTSB investigator to recognize that no airplane crashed in Pennsylvania, and an airliner did not do that to the C-ring of the Pentagon.
Just the velocity of the plane and the fact that there were...
And you sure don't have to be a PSYOPs expert to see through this line of BS spelled out by Jerome Hauer on the morning of 9/11. We'll have more on Jerome Hauer in Part 2. You don't have to be a geopolitical strategist to realize the wars are about oil and opium. And if you just open your eyes, you'll realize one of the most important messages contained in this video is that your leadership has not changed. We are on the same bus, on the same road, headed for the same destination. We just have a new driver. But right now, let's nail the coffin shut on the media perpetrators. Fact: all but one of the network feeds are exactly 41 minutes and 47 seconds, or 172 megabytes to download. To suggest that the media all broke the story at the same moment, stayed for the same duration, and left coverage at the same time is utterly absurd and one of the crudest and most obvious mistakes that the killers made. The only possible conclusion is that they were each given an allotted time frame to make it appear as if they were covering the same quote-unquote live events simultaneously. Fact: all of the live broadcasts from the networks on 9/11 contain serious anomalies, and they are thus unbelievable. Since these videos could not have been produced as the attacks were taking place, and they were broadcast and submitted as genuine, this painfully and obviously implicates all directors, CEOs, owners, editors, producers of the networks that broadcast that footage as complicit not only in the cover-up, but actively involved in the planning and implementation of the 9/11 attacks. This is an inescapable conclusion. From there, do you really think that the media could even dream of attempting such a hoax without the knowledge and even the direction of the highest echelons of the U.S. government? Of course they couldn't. And likewise, the government couldn't dream of attacking its own citizens without complete and total control of the mainstream media. These are inescapable conclusions based on the facts. Don't ignore the facts.